Yeah, you raise them right.
And
Whatever we do, just don't raise them left.
And he's on my boat.
That's right. 10 seconds of liberal tears. Here we go. No, but the green colors have worked some too. Listen, guys, don't get too bent out of shape about colors. Don't get too bent out of shape about colors. Black and blue can work. They can all work right now. We've been throwing green pumpkin burst, green pumpkin. We've been throwing a little bit of everything. You know, if we stop getting bites, we'll change colors and just see if we can get another bite. But today, for sure, the what they call plum bug or plum apple, that was for sure the best color today, for sure. And you can throw those ribbon tail worms. I do like throwing those on shaky heads. I've caught a bunch of them last summer on shaky heads, on the bigger oversized shaky heads. You can throw them on a Carolina rig and catch them. I've thrown ribbon tail worms all my life on a Carolina rig. But when I'm fishing brush piles, that 1/4 ounce or 1/8 ounce Texas rig is the deal. That's really the way to catch them in those brush piles. And you'll also later, as we continue on with this heat that we're going to continue having, those fish will suspend in timber. And a lot of people give up on those fish when they suspend in timber late in the year. And I'm telling you, you're making a mistake, because you can take that same exact thing, all the same principles that we just applied to the brush piles, and you can take that 1/4 or 1/8 ounce Texas rig with a ribbon tail worm, that ridge worm, and work it through the limbs of those trees where those fish are suspending, just like it's a brush pile. It's a suspended brush pile, essentially, is what it is, with all the limbs on the trees. If you can graft those fish in those trees and then work those, you can catch them the exact same way that we just talked about in brush piles that are on the ground. It works the exact same way. So, any questions on brush piles or ribbon tail worms?
What rod do you use?
What rod? Great question. I like the Century series, especially with a lighter Texas rig. You got to have some sensitivity. So I'm using the Century series, which is the most sensitive blank that I've fished with from 6 cents. And it's really the most sensitive blank that I fish with any line of rods. I've been on 3 different rod pro staffs, and this one's really good. I'm using a 7.3 heavy. With that Century series, you can get away. One thing I love about it is it's so light. The rods are so light that I can actually throw a rod that is overpowered for the weight of the bait that I'm throwing. Like if I want to, I can actually throw a weightless Senko on a 7.7 heavy in a Century series. I can cast it fine. No, I'm a really experienced caster, granted, but that's insane to think that I can throw a weightless plastic on a 7.7 heavy. That's just stupid. But 7.3 heavy is really good for that. It gives me that extra power. If you're fishing some other type of blanks, some other rods, typically I'm gonna throw a 1/4 ounce Texas rig on like a 7.1, 7.2, 7.3 medium heavy in most rod lines. But in that Century series, I can get that extra power, that heavy action on that 7.3, and it's really perfect for that technique and gives me the extra power that I want in that brush. One other tip, always set the hook up. A lot of guys like to do a little side hook set. No, when you're fishing in brush, set the hook straight up to your right shoulder and winch that fish straight up when he initially bites. You're trying to get that fish, the initial pull of that fish, to come up and out of that brush. Because wherever you set the hook, when you initially set the hook on that fish, that's the direction. When he's not expecting it, his head's going that direction. So if you set it to the side, that fish's head's going to the side. If you set it up, that fish's head's going up, and you want to get him coming up. Yep. Any other questions about brush piles or ribbon worms? No? Cody, talk to us. Let me guess. We're going to talk about some more finesse stuff.
Yeah.
All right, let's go. Hey, by the way, I've been throwing a 1/4 ounce shaky head too, so no matter how much hard time I give him over it, right, just know that I've been doing it too, and it is very effective when it gets hot like it is.
Oh, no, I'm throwing a drop shot with that shaky head worm.
Do I need to tell you my stance on drop shots? Like, you can win, everybody say, well, you can win a tournament on a drop shot, but you're still going to look gay doing it.
But when you've looked gay your whole life, you're used to it.
There you go. There you go. There you go. Cody Mays in the house.
But no, I'm fishing ledges and humps right now. Have been for probably, I guess, going on 2 to 3 weeks now. They've been steadily coming in more and more and more. Not all humps, not all ledges or road beds have them yet. But you know, me and Vic went and grabbed some new spots yesterday, and we found some in a couple spots, but the other spots that you would think would be perfect wasn't. If y'all don't have this yet, y'all need to download Navionics on your phone. This is a key thing of how I find these ledges and humps. So you can do your different shading. Let me find. All right, so here's a secondary point. But you can see there on how it shades it differently to where you can see all the detail of the contour of the ground. So once you find a pattern, then you can take that pattern, go to your Navionics, and look for similar places. And just like yesterday, I had about 10 different spots picked out, and we went and graphed those spots. But so on ledges, most of the time here lately, the fish have been setting up right on top of the ledges. So what they're doing is they're waiting for an ambush point. They're either them bait fish are going to be coming up that ledge, and as they're coming up, the fish are going to attack. So you need to get behind them fish, throw across the ledge, and drag it up. And what we've been doing with that is...
So you're setting up shallower and throwing it deeper?
Yes.
Nice.
Yep.
Okay.
We're just using the 7-inch Divine Shaky Worm in watermelon red with either a 3/8 ounce Divine Shaky Head, which is a 6/0, or the 5/8, which is a 7/0. The key thing, like Billy was saying about it, is I've lost more fish whenever I sweep to the side when I'm setting the hook. And it's just a habit. But you really need to set that hook upwards, because when you do, that hook's getting in the top of their mouth, which is the hardest part of the body, and they ain't coming off.
And you know that there's different hook set techniques for different baits. You know, right? Like I don't know how many people really know this or understand this. I think some people do, but I see a lot of customers getting in a boat that seem to set the hook the same no matter what they're throwing, and that couldn't be more wrong. We all know the importance, especially on pressured fisheries, of making sure that the bites you do get in the boat. Mm-hmm. And that hook set's where it all starts, man.
Yep.
And getting that right. And any time that you have a hook that sits up and down like this, right? So if we're talking about a Texas rig, we're talking about a shaky head, we're talking about a jig, we're talking about a hook that sits straight up and down. You want to set that hook up, right? Like crankbaits, treble hook baits, it's different. You pull, and then the thickness of the gauge of the hook, like how thick that wire right there is, determines how hard you need to set the hook. That and how much line you have out determines how hard you need to set the hook. Now, one thing that's great about a 6-inch shaky head, I don't mean to just...
No, you're good.
I'm taking right over your little section
No,
here,
you're fine.
but I'll throw this in there. So one thing that's really good about this 6-inch shaky head, it's a great stand-up shaky head. There's plenty of those on the market. But that hook is beefier, is stronger, and a thicker gauged hook than just about any shaky head you'll find. That's a beautiful thing. Because on Lake Fork, when we're fishing timber and brush piles and shell beds and God knows what else is out there, underwater bridges, who knows what we're fishing, docks. Man, it's really nice to have an 8-pounder on and be able to take control of him and not have a hook that, you can't bend it out. I weigh a lot more than 8 pounds, I think, last time I checked. And I can't bend it out. So that fish dang sure ain't bending that hook out. And you can take complete control over that fish with that thicker gauge hook. The problem is you got to set the hook harder. And you got to know that. If you're fishing a spot remover shaky head, you better not set the hook that hard or you're going to bow that hook out. Mm-hmm. But if you're fishing a 6-inch Divine shaky head, you better bust them like you're fishing a 3/4 ounce flipping jig.
That's right. I rocked the boat when I set the hook.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the thing is, so when that fish is eating that thing is setting just like that. When that fish comes up and eats it, all right, it's setting just like this. Mm-hmm. So when you set that hook straight up, what is it doing? It's pulling it up right into the roof of their mouth. Yeah. So if you set it to the side, a lot of times you may even miss the fish because of the way
skin hook them or get that soft meat in the corner. Yep. Yeah,
and it ain't no good. So just please, anytime you're doing shaky head, remember to set up. All right. But so how I'm working it, so I'll pull up, say a ledge. I grab the ledge. I see that the fish are on the opposite side or a road bed. Let's use a road bed. On the opposite side, I will set up on the back side of it. I will use my active target, which I know everybody's not fortunate enough to have that yet, but I'm getting about 40 foot away from that ledge. All right, and I'm casting over the road bed, and I'm sweeping it from 9
So you're
to
set up
3
the
o'clock.
same distance I am. Set up 40 feet away,
Yep.
cast it to 60, 70, 80 foot,
Yep.
and bring it back to it. Yeah.
That's right. And I'm just slowly dragging it. Just like he said, it's painfully slow. If, like Billy's always said, if you think you're going slow enough, slow down even more.
Yeah, go as slow as you can stay in a go and then go about half that speed.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Because a lot of my bites are actually coming after I move it. It's sitting there for 15, 20 seconds sometimes, and then all of a sudden they just eat it.
It's an advantage of that shaky head, right?
Yep.
Especially with that Divine shaky head worm. By the way, that Divine shaky head from 6 cents and the Divine shaky head worm are designed for each other for that worm to stand up at exactly a 3/4 degree angle. So a 9 o'clock angle. Like that worm was meticulously designed with that shaky head to stand up at that angle right there. Right now, the Smash Tech worm that I use on the big shaky head a lot, it'll stand straight up because it's got no salt. But that one stands up. It's got just the right amount of salt in it. It stands up at a 3/4 angle, a 9 o'clock angle when it's sitting dead still. So, yeah, of course it's going to get bit when it's sitting there doing this.
Mm-hmm.
In the wind current, in the water current, right?
Yep. Now, that's another thing that has really been brutal this week is there is
no
wind.
wind. Golly.
And
No wind.
that makes it tough. I mean, regardless, but yes, yeah.
That's where the brush piles have really come into play for me. Is when it gets slicked off like that, the fish are going to do one of two things. They're going to suspend kind of in nowhere, or they're going to get tight to something. And those brush piles are a great place for me to have like a little mini school of fish that can get tight. They can all get in that brush pile and hang out there. Mm-hmm. And that's when it gets dead calm, those brush piles play, man. They play so well.
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen it at the Classic. You know, they had that trailer with the fish in it. I don't know if you've seen it. I've seen a video of it.
I didn't see the video, but I saw the trailer. I was there, yeah.
Did you notice how they had a piece of wood that was about 4-inch gap underneath it, and where were all them bass at?
Yeah.
Right underneath it.
You know, I love going to those and looking at them in those trailer tanks that they set up for demos and all that. And in the Bass Pro Shops. Anytime you go to Bass Pro Shops and you go look, you'll have like all the redfish and the stripers and the catfish, or just kind of white bass, or just kind of whatever wandering around. And then like the majority of largemouth, like the vast majority of largemouth, like under a rock ledge, in the dark, hiding, just being buttholes. Yep. Like just like hiding, waiting for somebody to screw up and come by them that they want to eat, basically.
Yeah.
But what's funny about that, then when they dump the food in there, it's like all the largemouth just bully everybody.
Take over.
Like if a shark had a largemouth's attitude, nobody'd swim in the ocean.
Yeah, they're very aggressive.
Ever. They're mean.
They are mean.
Kind of jerks, really.
Yeah, kind of like you.
Well, there's a reason I do what I do.
I hear you.
I understand them. I'm with them.
I hear you. But like I said, go to the brush piles after the wind stops. But if you see the fish there, they're going to eventually turn on.
Oh, you can mark them on other stuff other than brush pile. It's not just a brush pile deal. I've been leaning on that this week pretty hard, but no, there's plenty of other ways to catch, other areas to catch them.
I mean, you can fish a spot for an hour, and as soon as you leave, they're gonna turn on. You never know. So be patient. Be very patient.
Talk to me about that, man, because that is a component. For me personally, it's probably the one with offshore fishing that I struggle with the most. The timing. Mm-hmm. The windows of opportunities. Today we got it kind of right. But I'll tell you, overall this week, it's like from about 8 or 9 a.m. till about 11 a.m., if you graph them offshore, you can kind of catch them. But from about 11 a.m. until I'm off the water at 3 or 4 p.m., it's like, dude, you can't catch them.
Yeah. It's hard.
And so there's definitely windows of opportunity in offshore fishing. Mark Pack, rest his soul, that's one thing he talked about a lot. And I got to have a few conversations with Mark about fishing. And one thing that's always great about talking to Mark is he just had so much more of an in-depth understanding than the rest of us did, because he was one of the early guys way back in the day on the offshore deal. And so he probably had as much time fishing offshore structure as anybody on earth did, being a full-time guide all those years that he was here. And that was something that he was very adamant about, was the timing. I mean, you can talk to many customers of Mark's that'll tell you they've been sitting all morning on a zero, and he's like, "It's all right, boys, just wait till 2:13, or wait till 2 o'clock or 1:30 or whatever it might be." But he'd pull up there and be like, "All right, it's 1:30. You fixing to catch them right there." And he could figure out the timing, and I think that's something that Lee Livesey has figured out, is timing. There's so much to getting the timing right on these offshore spots to when they're going to really feed, because if you're there when they feed, we're sitting here telling you about how to fish a shaky head and how to fish a Texas rig and brush. I got news for y'all. If you pull up on that spot when they're feeding, it really doesn't matter what you throw in there. Mm-hmm. It almost doesn't. Like, you could throw a dozen different things in there and catch them if you're there when they're feeding, because everybody here has seen fish school on the surface. Y'all have seen bass when they school on the surface. Mm-hmm. And they're just eating everything in sight. It doesn't even matter. You can throw a fluke, you can throw topwater, you can throw square bill, you can throw swim, you can throw anything in that school. If they're really schooling and feeding, you'll catch them. Right? That same thing is happening underwater on those offshore structure places when they're feeding. they are going absolutely nuts, eating everything that comes across it, and it doesn't matter. So if you can get the timing right, and I wish that I was a better fisherman and could tell you guys how to get your timing right, because I really don't have that figured out, to be honest with you. I don't. I run around, and sometimes my timing's right, and sometimes my timing's wrong.
Well, you know, my granddad used to be a guide out here back in the early 90s. His name was Don Powell. And he died when I was probably 12 years old, so I don't remember a whole lot of his stories. But I remember him telling me, and maybe you can help me with this, but he always talked about how in the summertime he would fish points. All right? He would talk about how he would fish it in the morning time, and then he would leave. And probably about 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, and then he would come back around 1 o'clock. He said that those fish will move up into this point first thing at night or in the morning, early morning, and then they will go into this pocket, okay? And then while they're in this pocket, this next group's coming up and they're staging. Well, they come out, and it's a mixed bag of them, that they're going back deep and they're going back in the feed. And he says whenever they start to transition is when he started catching them. In the middle part of the day and afternoon. And I'll never forget him telling me that, but we all have our own ways of fishing, so I've actually never tried that strategy. But, I mean, have you ever heard of anything like that on this lake?
No, that's not something I've done. You know, I'm always trying to catch them on, you know, for me, I've just gone with, this is kind of status quo bass fishing 101, but I'm trying to catch them when they're grouped up the tightest on the peak of the structure. Mm-hmm. So, like, if you've got a road bed, right, like I want to see them either on the corners or on the tops. And I want to see them grouped as tight as possible. That's when I get really excited about it. And I never really look for them in those transition areas, okay. Which is probably not good. Like I'm probably missing the boat a little bit. But
well, I've never done it either.
To me, when they get grouped up on the peak of the structure, that's in the main book that everybody talks about. That's no secret there, but yeah. That's what I ride around looking for.
Okay. And motor oil. Worms. I've never thrown that.
Motor oil. We need to get 6 cents to make a motor oil call. I used to throw motor oil worms all the time back in the day. That's old school. That's old school, baby. That's really old school.
But he also on them ledges, I'm also throwing these finesse jigs, 6 cents finesse jig.
There you go.
With a 6 cents crawl. I'm actually cutting it. Stroker crawl. I'm actually cutting it in half and putting it on.
How about the skirt? Are we trimming the skirt to the bend of the hook?
Yes.
Trim the skirt to the bend of the hook. Yep. Trim down the crawl to match it. Where the deal with the jig is, for me, Cody, I think we're the same way on this. So forgive me for I talk too much.
No, you talk. You're a better talker than I am, so that's fine.
Well,
I'm getting there.
What about all that? I don't know. I've heard you after you've had a drink, so maybe we just need to get you some whiskey before we get up here and start this deal.
Oh no!
Then you'll run me over. But you trim the skirt to the bottom bend of the hook, but I always want, whatever trailer I use, I want the appendages to start where the skirt ends. So we trim the skirt up to the bend of the hook, and then I shorten the trailer down to where, like, the little flapping arms, where they start, that's right where the skirt ends. I want the jig to be as compact as possible. I want it to all look like, I don't want there to be, like, a gap where there's just a body. Let me see this. I don't want my skirt to end here and my claws to start here. Does that make sense? I want it to all be one nice, compact, bulky piece, right? So it all kind of, the arms are working, the skirt's working, it's all flowing together. I just feel like it looks more natural that way.
It does, and that's exactly what I do.
That stroker crawl's a bad dude.
It is a bad dude.
We have been fishing some jigs, some half-ounce jigs and stuff in those brush piles, 3/8-ounce jigs and half-ounce jigs in those brush piles, and catch them on that as well as the rich ones.
Well, now how are you working your jig through them brush piles?
Same way. We're letting the brush put the action on the bait. We drag it up, let it fall down. Good thing about that stroker crawl, it's got narrow appendages, skinny appendages, so it doesn't take much water pressure to make those arms do some movement, and then when it falls and swims down, it's really kicking.
Yep. Well, how I'm working it across the ledges or humps, I'm dragging it. As soon as I stop dragging it, I let it set for a few seconds, and I can pop it, and I let it set. And a lot of times that bite's going to come right after the pop.
Get a little bit of hopping around.
Yep.
Yeah. Like a mini stroking it going on, kind of.
Yeah.
Nice.
And then there is always drop shot. I'm always joking about it.
We can't get through any seminars these days.
No.
Ever since you started coming around, we can't get through one of these without talking about that dang drop shot.
I'm going to keep talking about it until 6 cents makes me a worm.
Like a finesse worm?
Like a finesse worm.
Yeah. All right.
But no, the drop shot.
Well, heck, we'll probably talk about it more after they do.
I know.
Okay, so we're just gonna keep talking about drop shot.
Yeah.
No end in sight.
No end in sight. Not as long as I'm here.
You throwing across the boat.
Who?
You.
I mean, I have, but I don't. It's like a scooter and a fat chick. I don't want to tell anybody.
So the guy that was leading the Bassmasters there the first day or two, and he wouldn't let anybody see his jigs. He never will let him. What is
Steve
the deal
Kennedy?
with his, yeah, what's the deal?
Okay,
with his
well,
jig?
that's just Steve Kennedy though. Like, it ain't like his jig ain't nothing crazy special. Like, don't worry, it's not. Like, if you ever get to, so. How many watched Steve Kennedy? He was leading the first day of the Classic. Some of you guys have seen Steve Kennedy over. He's been around forever. He's won tournaments. One of the great angler. Well, you've heard him talk on camera, and it's kind of like a little scatterbrained and a little hard to follow and understand. Y'all ought to talk to that dude off stage. It's worse than talking to somebody from South Louisiana that you really don't know what they're saying. Like, he's talking to Roy about a jig, and then he's talking to Vic about a shake head. He's talking to Cody about a swim bait, and it's like boom, 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 boom. You know what I mean? No, no, Steve, I do not know what you mean. He is a different cat. You know, he's run no sponsors forever. He refuses to run sponsors for whatever reason. He just wants to fish. But he's very quirky. He's very unique. He kind of always is giggling for some reason. Still haven't figured that out, but he's always giggling.
He's an engineer. That's probably part of it.
He's a different cat, man. One thing about him is he's a good, solid human. He's a great man. Does a lot for others. He's a great man, and he is one of the better bass fishermen that we've seen in our generation. He's really, really good. But he's a weird duck, bro. He wasn't fishing anything different. He was throwing a white swim jig on the shad spawn, and then when he was pitching a jig and timber offshore. And I tell you, if he wouldn't that one that came off beside the boat on him on day 2, he didn't do anything wrong. There's no reason that fish came off. He got it out of the tree, got it to the boat. It did a jump, was kind of flopping on its side, and the jig just came out. He wasn't pulling the wrong direction. There wasn't anything wrong he did. It just came out. That was an 8 or 9 pound bass that if he puts that fish in the boat, because he only caught 4 that day, he now goes into day 3, the last day of the Classic, with a 4 or 5 pound lead at least.
He went deep that day, didn't
He did, and he went deep the last day. But if he goes into the last day with a 4 or 5 pound lead, I think he runs up there shallow and catches some flipping before he goes out deep, and I think he wins it. That's the second time in that guy's life that one fish loss has cost him the Bassmaster Classic. The other one was in Texas as well. It was at Lake Conroe when Jordan Lee won for the second time.
He finished third.
I'm not sure where he finished. He didn't have the deal with the Classic is there's no points involved. There's no Angler of the Year points. So those guys, when they get to day 3, if they're not winning, they're not leading, they're like going for broke, dude. Like, they're swinging. So he never even touched the shallow stuff. He fished offshore all day. Didn't have a very good day that last day, but that's because he was going there trying to catch a 30, 35 pound bait. And which, when they bite on Ray Roberts, it's very doable. But they obviously, there was so much changing conditions. Those guys had cloudy, cool weather like we've all had for the entire month, and then the day the tournament started, it got hot and sunny. The day it started, and they had high water that it was dropping as the tournament went on. It was changing.
4 foot high.
Yeah, it was 4 foot high, but you could tell, like on the shoreline where they were beaching the boats, it was coming down some throughout the tournament. It was a lot of changing conditions happening for those guys. That's why so many guys weren't able to catch limits and all that. Plus, Ray Roberts just doesn't have a lot of bass in it. That's the reality. Ray Roberts is known to be that way where, man, you might catch 35 pounds one day and you might catch 5 pounds the next day. That lake is known to do that to people. So.
Well, it's because our governor was there catching all the fish with a sideways reel.
Bro, I don't even want to talk about that anymore because I like him. And that's so bad. I don't even want to. Did y'all see Ted Cruz's Facebook post? It was shameful.
It was shameful.
That sucker was holding a bait caster like this. Like, what are you doing? Mixing batter, dog? Like, what are we doing over here?
No.
Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz. No, Ted Nugent knows how to fish.
Yeah.
No, Ted Cruz was there, but he was there for a good reason. He was there. He did the opening prayer for the tournament, the opening invocation of the event. So, good reason he was there. So, I don't want to make fun of him because I like Ted Cruz, but, man, that picture was bad,
He needs
bro.
some lessons. I'm just...
Like, I'll give him a free guide trip just to have him not look that bad on camera again.
I agree. I'll do it too.
Yeah.
But I'm just glad that they finally let some of my people in the big show, though.
Some of your people.
Yeah, some of my people.
Who are your people?
Your sleeveless trailer park hillbilly.
Bro.
people. I'm just saying. I'm a new fan.
Who wants some behind the scenes Bassmaster Classic stories that I cannot put on YouTube? Is there any more fishing questions? Is there any more?
I just want to say that J-Bo posted something today that made, from what you were talking about with the offshore stuff, that made a lot of sense. He said when he pulls up on them and he sees them, the first thing he'll throw is a flutter spoon, then he goes to the worm, and then the crankbait. And it made a lot of sense to me, and I thought, you know.
Trying to catch the reactionary fish first, then the slow fish, and then trying to force them into a reaction. Yeah. Okay.
You know, and he's pretty good at that offshore.
Oh, he's good.
He's
Yeah, he's real good.
He was a loss. I kind of liked old J-Bo.
Yeah, you know, he's young. I think he really, I think he want to be back home.
Yeah.
He's young.
But I liked
Really,
his
really young.
theory on that. That was good.
He's no, I'll take nothing away from that kid. I love working with him. He's a great guy. He's got a great work ethic, and he's very talented.
He's crazy.
Very talented.
Driving down a Highline way that's flooded, I would not do that.
Well,
God.
again, he's young, like really young.
Wrong lake.
Huh?
Wrong lake.
Yeah.
Wrong leg. That's right. That's right. All right, I gotta turn this off. Hey man, thank y'all for coming.